The moment President Trump declared Obama guilty of treason on live television, every news anchor froze. Every single one except Jasmine Crockett, who stepped forward and methodically dismantled his claims, fact by fact, while America watched in stunned silence. Inside the KCTV studio in Phoenix, Arizona, the atmosphere felt suffocating that Tuesday evening. It wasn't the desert heat or the blazing studio lights. It was the words that had just escaped the president's lips. Obama committed treason, plain and simple. The man deserves to be prosecuted. Those 9 words sent shockwaves through the entire media landscape. Anchor Patricia Wells blinked repeatedly before frantically shuffling her papers and cutting to commercial. Behind the scenes, chaos erupted. Producers screamed over each other, researchers typed frantically, phones rang endlessly. No one understood what they had witnessed or how viewers would react. In a smaller adjacent studio, Representative Jasmine Crockett sat watching the live broadcast. She was scheduled for a brief segment on healthcare reform legislation. Nothing controversial, just standard talking points and a few sound bites before heading to her next Phoenix appointment. But everything had suddenly changed. She slowly placed her untouched coffee cup on the table. No makeup artist nearby. No one whispering instructions through her earpiece. Her eyes remained fixed on the screen displaying the breaking news banner. There was no visible reaction, no sudden movement. She didn't appear surprised. She looked prepared. Jasmine's phone vibrated repeatedly. Her chief of staff, Marcus, peered into the room. "They want you live in 4 minutes. You certain you want to tackle this?" Jasmine glanced up at him, completely focused. "I don't believe I have any other choice." He lit the fuse. She stood, straightened her blazer, and walked past him without hesitation. The corridor to the main studio felt endless, like walking into an inferno. People whispered as she passed. One assistant accidentally knocked over papers when she walked by. She didn't pause. On set, Patricia Wells was still recovering. She offered a strained smile when Jasmine took her position. "Congresswoman Crockett," she said, adjusting her microphone. "You heard the president moments ago. Your reaction?" Silence. 1 heartbeat, then 2. Then Jasmine leaned forward slightly and spoke with quiet authority that cut through the tension. "Words carry weight, Patricia, especially when they come from the highest office in our nation." A pause. "Accusing a former president, one who served with dignity and transferred power peacefully, of treason isn't just irresponsible. It's dangerous." The cameras captured everything: her composure, her tone, the complete absence of panic, while commentators scrambled and former military officials texted reporters to clarify treason's actual definition. Crockett sat unmoved, like granite in a hurricane. She continued, hands folded, voice steady. "Let's be absolutely clear. Treason is constitutionally defined. It's not a term you casually throw around like confetti when you're having a difficult news cycle. There's no evidence, no trial, no justification. Just a man seeking a fresh distraction." Patricia attempted to interject. "But he claims—" Crockett didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "He claims many things, but facts don't bend to accommodate his narrative. They're stubborn that way." Behind the cameras, the crew stood frozen. Normally this would be when the anchor lightens the mood with humor to ease tension. But Patricia didn't dare interrupt. Jasmine continued, "My father served 3 tours. He taught me what true patriotism means. It's not a slogan on merchandise. It's not performing for cameras. It's standing for principles, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable." Patricia leaned closer, whispering slightly, "Are you saying the president lied?" Jasmine turned her head slightly, staring directly into the camera. "I'm saying the president knows better, and if he doesn't, then we face bigger problems than media sound bites." The silence afterward was deafening. The control room received viewer texts before the segment ended. The switchboard lit up like it hadn't in months. The moment the camera's red light dimmed, the studio exhaled. But Jasmine didn't. She removed her microphone herself, stood calmly, and walked off set without waiting for direction. Her team caught up halfway down the corridor. Marcus, breathless, showed her his phone screen. "You're already trending. Over 180,000 mentions and climbing." Jasmine didn't glance at the device. "What's the headline?" He read aloud. "Crockett destroys Trump over treason claim." She nodded once and kept walking. Downstairs in the lobby, journalists were already gathering. Several near the elevators, others outside. One shouted a question through the glass as she passed. "Are you accusing the president of inciting violence?" Jasmine didn't stop but answered loud enough for him to hear. "I'm accusing him of playing with matches in a gasoline-filled room." Back in the SUV, her team sat quietly for a moment. Jasmine's phone buzzed again. This time it was her law school friend Maria, now a prosecutor in Nevada. Maria's message read, "Girl, you just ended that man's entire evening on live television. You okay?" Jasmine barely smiled, then looked at Marcus. "I need another segment tonight. We're not letting him control this narrative." Marcus looked concerned. That was intense. Might be wise to pause. She shook her head. "This isn't just about Trump. It's about every child watching tonight who's going to wonder if Obama actually did something wrong. I'm not leaving that question unanswered." He sighed and began making calls. An hour later, Jasmine sat down for another live segment, this time with local anchor David Santos, known for his direct, sometimes aggressive style. The producers wanted balance, meaning Jasmine was now paired with former White House advisor Robert Vance, a man who built his career defending Trump's most controversial moments. Before going live, Robert leaned over and whispered, "Bold move tonight, Congresswoman. Risky game on live television." She didn't respond, just smiled like someone who knew her next 3 moves. David opened aggressively. "We're back, still reacting to President Trump's explosive accusation and Congresswoman Crockett's sharp response. We're joined by Robert Vance and the Congresswoman again. Let's dive in." He turned to Robert. "Robert, your former boss accused a former president of treason. Should Americans take this seriously?" Robert chuckled dismissively. "Look, David, when the president speaks, you need to understand the spirit behind his words." Jasmine interrupted politely but firmly. "The spirit? Treason is the only crime explicitly defined in the Constitution. This isn't abstract poetry. It's legal language." David raised an eyebrow. "Do you believe there was any validity to the president's statement?" She looked directly at him. "None whatsoever. And honestly, I don't think he believes it either. It's distraction. He does this every time something serious is about to surface." David leaned back. "Are you suggesting something major is coming?" She hesitated briefly, not from uncertainty, but because she understood the game. "I'm saying it's no coincidence this treason rhetoric emerged hours after the Department of Justice announced expanding its investigation into classified materials found at Mar-a-Lago. The timing isn't subtle." Robert raised his hands defensively. "Wait, there's no proven wrongdoing at Mar-a-Lago." Jasmine interrupted again, still calm. "There's plenty. You just prefer not discussing it." David held up his finger. "Let's refocus, Congresswoman. Are you concerned about backlash from tonight's comments?" She answered without hesitation. "If there's backlash for speaking truth, then I must be doing something right." The line landed hard. Even David leaned back, impressed. After the commercial break, Robert leaned in again. "You know they're going to target you now." Jasmine met his eyes. Let them try. But this transcended political theater. It touched something personal. Jasmine remained quiet during the ride back to her hotel. Her team knew better than to interrupt when her mind was processing, calculating every angle and ripple effect. She sat with one arm resting on the door, watching Phoenix streetlights blur past. In her mind, she wasn't in Arizona anymore. She was back in her grandfather's modest living room in Oak Cliff, Dallas. Plastic-covered furniture, wood-paneled walls, the lingering scents of tobacco and soap. That's where she first heard the word treason. She couldn't have been older than 8. Her grandfather, a retired Army sergeant with a voice that made everything sound weighty, pointed at the television during some news story about espionage. "That there is treason," he said. "Selling out your country. Nothing more dangerous than someone who plays patriot while stabbing the Constitution in the back." She remembered asking what happens to people who do that. He didn't hesitate. They pay, one way or another. It stuck with her, not as fear, but as understanding that some boundaries weren't political. They were sacred. Now, decades later, sitting in a car in a distant city, that same word had emerged from the president's mouth, used not to describe a spy or traitor, but to attack Barack Obama. She opened her phone. Dozens of unread messages flooded her inbox with opinions, rants, and support. But one message caught her attention, not because of the sender, but the attached image. It was a screenshot from a local history teacher in Denver, showing a black girl, maybe 11, standing before a whiteboard with Jasmine's face projected behind her. The teacher's caption read, "We watched your segment this morning. My students wanted to know why it requires so much courage to simply tell the truth." That's when it fully hit her. The reach of her words. She turned to Marcus. "We need to release a complete transcript. Everything, no edits, no spin. People deserve to hear exactly what was said." He nodded, already typing. Back in her hotel room, she kicked off her heels and sat on the bed's edge. The silence felt thick but not oppressive, just enough space for her thoughts to settle. The news played silently on every channel, running versions of her clip. Some anchors praised her, others warned she had gone too far. The usual script. Then her phone rang. This time it wasn't staff, press, or old friends. It was her Uncle Raymond, whom she hadn't spoken to in over a year, not since the funeral. "Hey, baby girl," he said when she answered. His voice sounded older, more weathered than she remembered. "I just wanted to say something." Jasmine sat back. "Go ahead." "I watched what you said twice, and I kept thinking your granddaddy would have been proud as hell." She smiled, looking down at the carpet. "You think so?" "I know it. He always said if you ever got a microphone, don't waste it trying to sound smart. Use it to tell the damn truth." They talked for 8 minutes. Nothing heavy, just memories. That's how Jasmine reset, by grounding herself in people who knew her before the spotlight. When she hung up, she sat quietly for several minutes, phone still in hand. Then she opened her notes app and began typing a list. Not talking points, but facts, dates, source links, quotes from legal experts, archived footage. She wasn't going to wait for the internet to distort her words. She was going to stay ahead of it. At the top of her note, she wrote, "If we're discussing treason, let's do it with evidence." The next morning, Jasmine's words were everywhere. Clips of her interview played continuously across cable networks. Her quote had been chopped, recaptioned, turned into memes. Some called her bold, others reckless. But even those trying to minimize her message had no choice but to repeat it. Still, it wasn't the headlines that mattered to her. It was the faces. That afternoon, she arrived in Tucson for a roundtable with local high school students and educators, something her office had scheduled weeks earlier. Normally, these visits were low-key. She'd discuss education policy, take questions, pose for photos, and leave. But this time, the students had already seen her. One girl near the back raised her hand halfway through. "Congresswoman Crockett," she said, her voice slightly trembling. "How do you keep speaking up to powerful people like that without getting scared?" Jasmine paused. She looked at the girl, long braids, chipped nail polish, biting her lip while waiting. "I do get scared," Jasmine said, "but I don't let fear be the final emotion I feel before speaking." Silence. Then a few heads nodded. Someone murmured, "That's real," under their breath. Later, during a private lunch with school staff, Jasmine was approached by a teacher named Ms. Rodriguez. She held a manila folder tightly. "I wanted to show you this," the woman said, opening it carefully. "One of my seniors, he's on the debate team. He stayed up half the night writing a response to what you said. He printed it because he doesn't use social media." Jasmine took the pages. The handwriting was neat. The title read, "Why Truth Still Matters." She read the first paragraph and felt her throat tighten. Back in her hotel room that evening, Jasmine found herself replaying the exact moment on air when everything shifted. Not the statistics or legal definitions, those were important, but the precise moment she stopped answering questions and turned her focus directly to the viewing audience. Looking into the camera, she had said, "You can't rewrite history every time it becomes inconvenient. You can't scream treason just because you lost a narrative battle. And you certainly can't weaponize patriotism to hide your own misconduct." At the time, she hadn't planned those words. They weren't in her notes. They came from instinct. But it was the line everyone latched onto. Her inbox was now flooded with letters from veterans, educators, former civil servants. Some lengthy, others just a line or two. One from a retired Navy captain simply read, "You said what needed saying. Thank you for having the courage." But the clip didn't just resonate with her supporters, it rattled her critics. Within hours, political strategist Maxwell Rinton appeared on air calling her divisive, accusing her of inciting partisan hostility. She wasn't surprised. But what did surprise her was the text from an unexpected number. Marcus Neal, a Republican congressman from Kansas, someone she'd clashed with on committees just last year. He was traditional, blunt, and usually avoided any media firestorms. But his message was brief. "Don't back down. You're right. Some of us are just too afraid to say it publicly." She read that message twice before setting her phone down. The silence in her room felt different now. Not heavier, but sharper, like something was shifting in real time, and she was standing at its center. The next morning, her staff sent a link. Overnight, her clip had reached 6.5 million views and rising. Marcus called from the lobby. "3 networks want exclusive interviews. Should I decline them all?" She looked at the TV, paused on a still image of her from the previous night, eyes locked, mouth mid-sentence, determined. "No," she said. "Let's do one, but it happens on my terms."